Welcome back to the second podcast for AliJamal.com. Today, Ali tells all about how you can succeed in the vacation rental business thanks to the advent of platforms such as Airbnb and VRBO. And get this, he also has tips on how to make it big in this business without owning any property or having good credit. I know, it's hard to believe. Stay tuned and you'll be pleasantly surprised. Hello again, Ali. Can you tell us, as an investor, how you utilize the Airbnb platform?
Airbnb was an opportunity for me to get my foot into the hotel business on a very micro level about 10 years ago. Initially, there was just a lot of buzz around the platform because a lot of owners of, once again, condos and homes, when the platform first came out, were making income that they had not made before and at a much better rate. You know, if you think about it, if you typically rent out a one bedroom condo or a couple bedroom condo or a home and you're getting a monthly rate, you know, depending on where that location could be, at that time, you know, you're looking at, you know, $800 up to, let's say, $1,500 depending on location. Now with Airbnb, you know, you were able to rent out your unit for $100 to $200 a night, depending on demand. And so that significantly increased your return. So there was a lot of buzz at the time from investors who were doing really well with the platform. And so I heard about it just through my own personal networks. The Olympics were coming to Vancouver, Canada, the Winter Olympics. And I had a few rental properties that I was looking to maximize my returns on. And luckily, during that time, I had actually empty units. I basically wanted to try and run a micro hotel. And Airbnb is a platform. It's an online platform that enables individuals that have single family residential homes, condos, bed and breakfasts, to basically access a huge potential network of individuals who would like to utilize those spaces and pay a fee to do so. And what I found when I rented it out for the Olympics, that they were right. There was an absolutely amazing opportunity to get a stronger return versus having a long-term monthly rental in there.
How is it that Airbnb has become so popular versus all these other platforms that are available?
I think, well, Airbnb really started these platforms in terms of renting out homes on a daily basis. I'm sure that there were, you know, it was being done on a micro level between individuals on, let's say, Craigslist, which is another online platform sharing community. But I don't think it was done on the scale that Airbnb was doing it. So I think Airbnb was really a market leader in providing that type of opportunity for homeowners to become micro hotel owners. And so I think that's why it's kind of been the number one kind of used platform. But, you know, that being said, there's other platforms out there, like you mentioned. There's Canada Stays, there's VRBO, there's Booking.com. There's a lot of different platforms out there right now, just as a backdrop to Airbnb, to create some diversification and some risk management while you're running your Airbnb business.
Is this a seasonal gig? Like, what would I do if I wanted to reserve my place for Airbnb, but then wintertime comes and, you know, there's not that many tourists?
Well, I think it depends on location. So if you're in a high demand city, like, for example, Vancouver, I don't think that it's as seasonal. Now, in Vancouver, you have a lot of competition. You really have to manage your rates almost on a daily basis. And a lot of people just don't have time for that. But that's really where you have to start looking at third-party resources, companies that can help you manage those properties, because they have the time and the abilities and the expertise to manage those rates for you on a daily basis, and then manage a lot of the other components of your Airbnb rental. You know, in slower cities, let's say you were in North Dakota, in Minot, North Dakota, where I have some investment properties. In a city like that, where there's not high Airbnb usage, regardless of season, you're just not going to get a strong, you know, attraction of people coming to stay at your property. In some markets, you just have to come to the realization that Airbnb won't work. because the local demographic just might not be utilizing it that much. Travelers to that area might be just more used to staying at hotels, and to convert them over is just not going to be that easy. In higher traffic markets like Vancouver, like Atlanta, like New York, like Paris, etc., no matter what season, you're always going to have a strong potential customer base. But once again, the challenge comes down to your competitors. And if they're undercutting you by 10, 20% for a very similar product, you're going to have a very hard time competing against them unless you're changing your rates daily. Let's say there is an event coming in within the next couple of weeks in Vancouver, and you know that. Go into your calendar on Airbnb and change your rates during that time to basically represent the fact that you're going to have more demand. It's very similar to what Uber does. Uber is the ride sharing service, and when there's a high traffic time or high demand time, they have something called surge pricing. And so their pricing automatically jumps during a time when they know they have a high demand. Airbnb does give you that option of basically handing over the keys to them and letting them dictate your price depending on demand. And they go by very strong algorithms. So it's sometimes the smartest thing to do to sign on to what they call smart pricing with them. And that enables you to basically just go along with market demand.
Tell me more about some of the other services that you've outsourced or that you know that you can outsource for Airbnb.
I would say, look, the smartest way to run a business for anyone is to work on your business, not in your business, right? And I think all business owners want to get to that point. Now, of course, initially it's hard to do that because you need to cut your operating costs, and sometimes you need to be the one that cleans the unit after it's been utilized by your Airbnb guests. You have to be the one that's managing the bookings on the back end, etc. At a certain point, once your Airbnb gets going and once you've gotten some strong traction, it really makes sense to hire a third-party cleaner. And it also makes sense to potentially, depending on how busy you are, have someone else manage the back-end reservations for you. There's companies that can do this. There's a company called Evolve, I believe, and many other third-party companies. It takes a quick Google search to see who actually provides that service. There is a lot of opportunity to utilize third parties as you scale your Airbnb business. So you're, once again, more focused on marketing, more focused on managing your managers.
Do you think we could find people to actually do the viewings? Like, what about people to actually meet and greet the customers?
Yeah, so absolutely. There's companies out there who basically are turnkey. So they'll do everything for you. So you have the property and they will manage it from top to bottom for you. They will do the viewings, they will do the cleanings, they will do everything. Those companies are going to be more valuable to investors in very strong markets. So for example, a market like Orlando, where you're very close to Disneyland, you're going to be basically rented almost at 90 to 100% occupancy if you have a home close to Disneyland. And so the level of traffic that you have is going to warrant you having a third-party company manage your rental for you. You're most likely going to be doing over $150,000, $200,000 in rental revenue. You obviously don't want to be doing all the cleanings and everything else because a lot of the stuff is going to be back to back. And so it's going to be very stressful, especially if you have a job, etc. In those scenarios, you do need a third-party company. In a slower market, so let's say Atlanta, which is a decent-sized market, but it's not like Orlando, where you're going to have people coming in from Disneyland and all that sort of stuff. I would say you can hire a individual at, let's say, $15 an hour and have them do the showings for you and have them do the cleanings for you. And just have that one person who can manage all of those items for you. That might be a little bit more cost sensitive for your budget because the third-party companies that you hire are expensive. They're going to take at least 15 to 25% of the revenue that comes in your door, and that's after you've paid Airbnb already a commission. You don't want to be paying commissions all over the place if you're not bringing in that much money. So sometimes it just makes sense to bring in someone on an hourly rate that you find on Craigslist or Indeed, hire them out, and then just have that one person you're dealing with at a much lower rate.
Now tell me more, because you do own vacation rentals, how you manage them and keep them successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think number one, it comes down to acquiring right in the right areas. One thing that we do with Airbnb is we buy brand new homes most of the time. So we're always looking for a newer product because we know that the Airbnb customer is going to be IT, web savvy, probably a young professional, maybe even a millennial. And so they're looking for a certain type of asset that is a little bit newer. I would also add that I think it's really important to, in terms of location, if it's not right in the city or very close to kind of the core of the city, then look at acquiring properties close to the airport because you're going to get that business traveler who might not want to stay at the airport hotel or a hotel near the airport, but they're more than willing to, spend the same money and get a full house right by the airport. It makes it just a lot more conducive with them. And sometimes, business executives like to travel with their wife or their family. Having an Airbnb is just a lot more accommodating for them than a hotel room. We also would like to get a home that's a little bit more unique. One thing that I found that works really well is contemporary designs. So newer architectures, kind of that almost Malibu-ish type of architecture. You can get those type of homes in cities like Vancouver and on the West Coast, but even in Atlanta, those homes do really well because when someone's booking an Airbnb, they don't want just a regular house a lot of the times. They want something unique, especially if they're going to host a party or host friends over. So that's something I would definitely suggest.
What else do you do like inside the actual house apart from design? Is there a welcome basket? What are the little things that you can do to kind of make them feel really welcome?
If you've hired someone, like we talked about hiring someone on that hourly basis, someone who has great hospitality skills. We have someone here in Atlanta that just does an amazing job. Everyone that meets her is just telling us how great of a job she does, introducing herself and letting them know all of the amenities of the unit, and just making them feel at home. A lot of these people are coming from out of state or out of the country. They just want to, be comforted sometimes. We do have a welcome basket. We have a folder that kind of gives a breakdown of all of the amenities in the unit and how they can be used. One of the biggest annoyances for a lot of people is the remote control, right? Because we know how to use our remote controls at our house, but when you go to a new house, it takes a little while to learn how to use the TV sometimes. Just making sure that you've outlined everything for that guest so they are not going to have to fiddle around with the things around the house.
This is probably going to be a lot easier for people that own property. Do you have any advice for people that don't own any property? Is it even possible for them to get started with an Airbnb business?
Absolutely. So, if you don't own property, I mean, one of the other opportunities is to find a property that you like or that you think a potential customer would like. Work with the landlord of that property and let them know that you would like to sublease their unit on Airbnb. Most landlords are obviously going to be a little bit apprehensive. This is not something that they're used to. They're used to just getting that monthly rental check and without any hassle. You have to utilize your sales skills and really let them know that this is an opportunity for them to get a long-term renter and actually less usage of their space, because there's going to be gaps in between when people are utilizing the space for Airbnb. So you just let the landlord know that, look, I would like to rent this unit from you. If the rent's $2,500 a month, just say, I'm more than willing to pay $2,500 a month and sign a 12-month lease. I will be utilizing the space as Airbnb. I will furnish it, and I will make sure that I take responsibility for any of the guests that I put into this unit. You can almost be guaranteed that I will make sure that my rent is paid on time, and that I'll be taking care of your unit to the best of my abilities.
Can you expand a little bit more on what other perks you can offer the owner of the property?
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things you can always look at with the owners of the properties is offering more rent than what they're asking. So that's a great negotiation tactic. Is if the landlord's asking for $2,000, you can say, hey, I'm more than willing to offer you $2,500. If you know that this property is located in a great place, then you've done your homework, and you know that you're going to be able to make a lot more than $2,500 in terms of rental revenue. If you can bring in $4,000 in rental revenue, but your rent is only $2,500, guess what? You have a $1,500 margin there. sometimes paying the landlord a little bit extra just to get access to the unit, which is located in a great place, is totally worth it because your top line revenue of the Airbnb is going to be so much higher than the rent that you're paying them.
Okay, great. Are you willing to talk more about some of the vacation rentals that you manage in your portfolio and give us some numbers on how they do?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a location just on the outskirts of downtown Atlanta. It's in a great location. It's a modern home, kind of like that Malibu style that I was talking about. And top line, this is before expenses, it does about $10,000 a month on average. If I was renting it monthly, that same house, I would be getting about $2,500 to $3,000 a month. So that gives you a little bit of perspective on the jump in revenue that you can have by putting things on Airbnb. Now, after my expenses, after paying my cleaner, after paying my mortgage, after paying everything, that $10,000, I'm left with about $2,000 in net income. So that's not bad. You know, if you can make $24,000 a year profit on a house after paying the mortgage, you're doing pretty good.
How much of the services do you outsource for that particular property?
Everything. My manager basically, manages the back end, takes the reservations, etc. She also does the cleaning, and she also does the welcoming the guests and all of that. So I pay her a flat fee of management every month, and that includes kind of all of the times she's going to be called to handle issues, etc. And then as well, I pay her per cleaning. I'm completely hands off. All I know is that I get a check every month, and I'm left with about $2,000 in profit every month after everything.
Do you own any properties that are away from the city center?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a home by the airport. It's in a smaller suburb behind the airport. I bought the property for a very low price. We bought it for in the mid 100s. It was new construction. It's a bit of a smaller house in a smaller location. However, we're doing about $4,000 a month in rental revenue on average. And we end up with a net profit of about $800 to $1,000 after all of our expenses. That's including mortgage.
The amount of time that you invest into it, it's worth the income that you're getting?
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm not putting any time into it. We have a manager that manages everything. I would be lying to you if I said I did anything. Really, the manager manages everything. The only thing I'm doing is cutting checks for people that are managing the property. And that's how you want to be running the business. If you yourself are going and picking up rent checks and showing the unit and cleaning the unit, you're not really running a business. You're really you just earned a job. That's all you've done. If you're running a business, you're cutting checks. If you're working in a business, you're basically, just trying to save money and doing the work yourself. Let's say, for example, instead of $1,000 at the end of the month, I only made $300. I would still be very happy because that $300 is after I've paid my mortgage, so I'm building equity, and that's after I haven't had to do anything. Not only that, the units remaining empty for a good portion of the month, so there's less wear and tear on the property. On a monthly renter, you have someone living in the property all the time, and it's very hard to get into the unit to check the unit. Here, as soon as someone checks out in the Airbnb, we do a walkthrough. And so we're doing about 4 or 5 walkthroughs every month. So we know exactly the condition of the property at all times. One of the biggest challenges for monthly renters is if you have a renter that's been with you for 6 months, you most likely haven't been in that home for 6 months. When the renter ends up eventually leaving, you go into the unit and you're like, wow, what the heck happened in here? How are they living? I've had that experience many times. So you don't have that with Airbnb because you're always going in the units, checking out people.
Do you have any other advice on how we can screen clients? These are all strangers to us. We don't know who they are.
One of the biggest benefits of Airbnb is the fact that it's community-based. Landlords, or the people renting out their units, they are being rated by the guests, but the landlord also gets an opportunity to rate the guest. So it almost becomes a self-policing model. People do not want to have bad ratings because they want to rent future units when they travel. And if they have a bad rating, they're not going to be able to rent. So our manager knows that if someone has a bad rating below, like, let's say 3 stars, they're just not going to be able to rent with us. Of course, you're going to have to do the basics of making sure if someone's paying with credit card, you get a copy of the driver's license and you get a copy of the credit card just to have on file in case there's a dispute. I would have to say, after being in this business for about 3 years now, I have not had any major issues with people. Usually people are very well behaved. Knock on wood. I don't know if that's always going to be the case, and I'm sure we'll always, once in a while have a bad apple, but overall, we've been very happy with the self-policing model.
Let's talk a bit about the future. Over here in Vancouver, we have buildings, residential buildings, new buildings going up everywhere. We're expecting the rents to go down. I'm guessing this is going to be the same situation in most major cities like Atlanta. Where do you see the future of Airbnb going?
From a political landscape perspective, there's a lot of pressure from the hotel lobbies to kind of really push Airbnb out of cities and really legislate it a lot stronger, making sure that owners of homes that are on the Airbnb platform are getting business licenses and paying the appropriate taxes, etc. I think that's going to get worse and worse as time goes on. So you have that pressure from a political standpoint coming on owners. Also, you have large hotel chains like Hilton getting into the vacation home business. They are creating their own platforms to compete with Airbnb, buying homes, and then renting out homes on a daily basis as well. So I think there's going to be a lot more competition. And once again, there's going to be a lot more legislative and political pressure. The landscape is still big enough to fit all of those competitors and still do really well. There's so much more travel going on nowadays because of globalization, where people are just traveling all over the world and people are traveling more than they've ever traveled before. And Airbnb is the new kind of way for people to travel over and above utilizing hotels.
Do you see growth in certain areas more than others?
There's always going to be strong Airbnb activity in the major hubs, right? Like New York, Paris, London. Those cities, like, Airbnb owners are just doing amazing, right? Ancillary markets like Atlanta, like Vancouver, like even places like Minneapolis, Minnesota, those markets are going to continue to grow as the Airbnb platform grow, because people are eventually going to start waking up and saying, hey, why would I spend $200 a night in a hotel room when I can spend $200 a night and get a full house? I would rather just do the full house. I get more privacy, I can go in and out when I want to, and I get a lot more space.
Do you have any parting words of advice for our listeners?
Number one, just ensure that if you're going for Airbnb property, make sure you're going for a unique one. Focus on a location and just understand that customer service is key.
Okay, great advice. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Stay tuned for our next podcast on how to invest coming soon. Bye for now.